Yeah, okay. So we're going to record this session if that's okay with everyone. So just to let you know before we do that, so we're going to record it now. And I'd just like to thank Regina, Eimear and Laura for joining us on the call this evening. And we'll go down through a few bits and pieces with them. Regina's just going to talk about some training and how she got into adventure racing and training with groups and then opening up the recovery rooms. And Eimear is our physio, and she's going to go through some questions and stuff with us there as well later on. And Laura is going to have a chat with us about yoga and incorporating that into our sports lifestyle, and obviously how she got into it and now teaches it as well. So I'd just like to take the opportunity to thank you guys for coming along. I really appreciate it. And hopefully, if any of you have any questions, as I said, just open up the little chat box there, and we'll keep an eye on them as best we can. Myself and Susan are going to try and keep an eye on them this evening, and we'll throw them out to the guys. And we'll have questions and answers after the 3 slots. So if you want to hold on for a little chat afterwards, that'd be great. Okay, so are you all right there, Regina, if we kick off with you?
Yeah, about away.
Okay, great. So I always wanted to know, because we race quite a bit, and obviously you hit the old podiums there as well yourself. How did you actually get into adventure racing?
The first time that I ever even heard of an adventure race or saw anything about it was down in Killarney in 2012. And my husband entered the race, and it started and finished in the middle of Muckross. Like, it was a much smaller event, do you know?
Yeah.
So I had 4 children under the age of 5 at the time. So we went down to be spectators and to be cheering them on. But like when they were coming in past the finish line, I was just standing there, and it was brilliant. Like, it was so inspiring. They were all like, they were dying coming in. Do you know, it was a hard course. Well, Dave hadn't the training, you know, it was his first race. He wouldn't have had half enough training done for it, but like they were buzzing. They were on a real high. There just seemed to be a great sense of kind of camaraderie, and everyone was high-fiving, and people that didn't even know each other, do you know? But yeah. I was just standing there with the 4 lads saying, I'm not standing here next year. I'm going to be doing it, like.
Yeah.
So that was it. I said, Jesus, next year I'll have a bike, and that's exactly what drove me into it, I think.
And you went from strength to strength, like, because, you know, from starting to where you are now, like, you know, you're a really good racer and you fly along the courses, you know, like, what actually being a mother of 4 and trying to fit in your time for training and everything, how did you manage all of that and still get the drive to go on and do it, like?
I suppose once you start it all, it's very addictive. You know, you really get into it. And it's so enjoyable, you know, even when you're only starting out, like. But I probably would be competitive too. You know, I'd have a competitive nature that even the first race, like I was competing against myself to make sure I was going to finish it, and, you know, that kind of a, but there is such a sense of achievement in it that when you've one done, you're just looking for the next one. Do you know, you're wondering, where am I going to find another one to do? And I suppose the breaking up as well, like if you know, like you start off, I was more into the running than the bike, but then you start getting a bit stronger on the bike, and, you know, you start enjoying that, and then the running might drop off. And then to throw in the kayak as well, sure, it was just, it's the variety, do you know? And then where they run the races, like sure, the scenery and the places that you get to actually race, you know, and you're in Killarney and Glendalough and, you know, Westport and places that, like, it is amazing, you know. It's a super day out.
And how did you juggle, like, with the 4 kids, Regina, and going to these places, or, like, you know, if they were all very young, or did you have an older kid that could kind of help in there? Like?
No, actually, like, what we used to do is our social life became training and doing the races. So, like, instead of getting a babysitter on a Saturday night, we got one at 7 o'clock on a Sunday morning. Do you know, to come in and mind the lads? It was totally, do you know, but that was what we were doing. Like, we were bringing them in at 7, and we'd meet as a group then from 8 till about 11. And, like, she'd come home, and that was how, you know, it worked that way when the 2 of us were doing it. Before that, it was a case of who'd get up earliest. And like, you know, there was mornings there, you turn over and I say, oh my God, 6:30, he's gone. So then you'd have to wait till he'd come back before I'd be able to go, you know. So it was easier, it worked well. And to be able to train with a group then was brilliant too, because, you know, you get pushed on so much and you train hard. You know, it's hard, it's easier when you're with a group to be.
Yeah. And do you find the group sessions drive you on and make you faster, or are they just a case of it's a bit of both? It's more enjoyable to train as a group and it actually, unknowns to yourself, helps you along?
Yeah, well, they do make you faster because, like, even if you're not overly competitive, you want to stay in the group, you know, like, especially if you're cycling, that you want to stay with the group because it's easier than be dropped off and on your own. But and you get great encouragement from other people, and you know, your training buddies are your friends, you know. So it is a very kind of, it's good fun, but you are put under pressure because you don't want to be, you know, dropped off, or you know the way. But what we used to do, like on Sundays, was, say there'd be 8 or 10 of us from Because We Can that would meet up, and we would go out in kind of staggered times, you know. So the first 2 or 3 would go, and then 2 or 3 minutes later, or less, like 2 minutes, 1 minute, so that we'd all kind of arrive at the location at the same time. But like, everyone was under a little bit of pressure, or some people were under, I was under savage pressure. But you know, that was it, to stay ahead. It's kind of like a rabbit going out, and then they were all coming behind you. So, but like, it was good fun, but it was also like a race, you know. So it did give you that speed training, and gave you the feeling of being under pressure, which is what you need, you know, in races. That horrible feeling of that you're going to die.
That you're giving it max, like you're totally max when you're racing. So it's,
and then like when you're coming back, you have that done, so you try and come back then as a group and try and stay together. And that's where you know, the whole kind of you know, when you're stuck together and you're taking turns at the front, and you know, that helps too, you know. And and you have a bit, you know, sociable side to it too.
And that's the side of adventure racing, is because we can actually draft and kind of TT work together. So if you're in a group, it's not like triathlon, where if you meet a group, you can't use each other, you know, to get
and like, you know, in the adventure racing in particular, if you're a woman there and there's a group of men, like, they will deliberately take you into the group and keep you there. And a lot of times, like, I would have met small groups where I'd sit in the middle and they wouldn't allow you go to the front. You know, you get the break and they give you the rest, and then on. So there is huge, you know, there's huge bonus of being in a group, you know, be it training or even to find them in the race that you could.
I think it's great, and it's great training in practice as well, because at least then if you do meet a group out on the adventure race, that you can all take your turn up the front and know how to hang on and actually form a good group and keep it going. So it is good to even try that in training as well.
No,
so you obviously, over the years, Regina, you've obviously got better. Sure, you were the sports national series champion, I think, in 2018. So would you attribute all the training from group training, or would you like find that solo training, and obviously adventure racing is solo, it's a solo event, even though on the bike we do have the opportunity to help one another? What do you think? Do you think a bit of both is good, or do you think one over the other is better for you in particular, but in general?
In general, I suppose a bit of both is good. I mean, it's great that you can do the race type, you know, sessions with a group and put yourself under the pressure, but you won't obviously do that every week. And, you know, if you were to, you'd be sick of it after a while. So it's grand too then to have your recovery days and go out and enjoy it. You know, so like, you don't want to take the good out of the whole thing by hammering the road out of it every time you go. So it's nice. Like, there was often Wednesdays there, like myself and Dave and Matt Casey, we'd go on an easy day on a Wednesday, where you go off and just explore hills and find routes, and you need those kind of days too to enjoy the whole side of it. But I suppose you do need a little bit of pressure as well to stay on the competitive side, you know, if that's what you're into, you know.
And on the groups that you would have done, Regina, like, would there have been a right mix of people in the groups in terms of some people just going out wanting to just enjoy the adventure race because they are very social, even on the course, people are very chatty. And, you know, that's one of the things that I really like about the adventure racing is it doesn't matter whether you're at the bottom or at the top, everyone will at some point be able to salute you, obviously not coming down a mountain. Never say hello to anyone if you're going up and they're coming down because they're obviously looking at the ground. But generally speaking, the chit chat is always good, you know, along the course. And I suppose from the amount of groups that you've been out with or that you've helped train in as well and organise, what kind of spectrum of people do you get in those groups?
Well, I suppose because we can group, it was out and out race group. You know, everyone was. It was more. They were very competitive and very racy. Whereas Into the Wild then was a bigger group. There was up to 30 people in that, and it kind of naturally formed 3 groups out of the 30. You know, where you had, I won't say beginners because there was no one really beginners, but you had. Everyone kind of found their buddy in the group. So you had the first group, second and third, and if they were going out, the first group might do maybe 2 or 3K less on the route than the second, and then the third group would do the longest, but we'd all arrive at the same, you know, time. But there was, most of them were like, in the Into the Wild group, they all did the races, you know, most of them, they were competitive, you know, but there was a lot of them there, you know, that were out for the fun and the company and the camaraderie and all that side of it too, you know, so there was a great mix of, you know, but like, I suppose with men and women, when they were all joined together and there was a hill there and there was a bit of a competitive streak in them, but no, there was a lot of fun too. And the social side, you know, you have a few nights out after, and especially the nights after the races. I mean, they're fierce, you know, they're great crack.
They're great crack.
So that's part of why you do the race.
Yeah.
The party after, do you know?
Exactly.
So I suppose if you had access to a group, it's great. But and if you don't, like, it on your own is fine too. But if you can do both, it's brilliant. You know.
Yeah, I think a combination of both is nice. You know, where you get to do a bit of running on your own or biking on your own, because you're going to be on your own at some point, possibly at an adventure race. So it's nice to be able to understand how you cope with that. If you're used to a group all the time, it's nice to be able to see how you cope with being on your own, and vice versa. If you're on your own all the time, it's nice to see how you know, do in a group.
Yeah. Exactly.
Regina, you also opened up the recovery rooms, and I suppose this will be kind of leading on nicely onto Eimear's segment there on physio and stuff like that. In Mallow, I suppose, what kind of made you decide to go down that route? And I mean, I think the recovery rooms are a brilliant thing. They really do help recovery. But from your own perspective, what do you think the benefits are?
Well, for anyone that doesn't know what, say, a recovery room is, it's we have an ice bath, a hot tub and a sauna on one side, say, and then you have a room where you have the compression boots on the other side, and then you'd have a little area for the massage guns and rollers and all that. So, like, the ice bath, when you come in first, we'd be encouraging people to, say, go into the water first. So you do maybe 3 or 4 minutes in the ice, then into the hot tub, and over and back, contrast therapy. Like, the ice bath just speeds up recovery. Do you know, it eases the muscles after training. And if there's any inflammation going to start, you know, it limits it when you're in a bath of like 4 degrees or less. Sometimes it's 3, sometimes it could be 2. Yes. Depends on who's coming to get into it. Like some of the GA teams would, they'd be looking for that cold, you know. And then when you go from the ice into 40 degrees into the hot tub, it just has a kind of a, you know, your blood vessels are constricting and then dilating. So you're flushing out all the toxins and the lactic acid from the legs. Okay. And basically it's a recovery from races, or like, in preparation of a race, just to get the body ready for the race. And similar with the compression boots, you're sitting in a chair, 2 boots pulled up, and that kind of works on, it inflates and squeezes the whole way up through your leg, through the 2 legs in different zones, so it's like a massage, and you sit there for 20, 25, 30 minutes, totally relaxing. And that increases blood flow and just, kind of gives the legs, just rejuvenates them and gets you going again, It's just the cold water was always something that we would have used anyway. We'd have a barrel of water at home that you'd come straight in from a run and hop into the barrel, or if you were anywhere that there was water, we would have always sat in the river after. And it's hugely effective. Whereas if you don't do that, you feel it the next day, your legs are broke up, whereas you do get a great, it works, like, simple.
Yeah. I mean, we'd hit the river after a training session as well, and or even after the races in Dingle, sure, we'd be all into the sea. Down the thing, So it is very good.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks a million, Regina. Thanks for your time. I hope you'll stay on and for the question answers after. That'd be great. Thanks a million. Eimear, how are you?
Good. How are you keeping?
Good now. Good. So, Eimear, you've been racing both here. You did a bit of adventure racing here and abroad. You lived in Australia for a long time. And how did you get into the adventure racing side of things?
Well, I would have started off in triathlon and Ironman. So I would have done that for quite a few years over in Australia. And then, it's probably my personality. I get bored quite easily. So that made me dive into the adventure racing scene. So started off in Australia, but in between summers coming back to Ireland, I joined some of the Quest adventure races, or particularly the one over in Achill. So again, the freedom of being out in the trails, and I suppose the unpredictability of the courses, which can be quite different than to do in triathlon or Ironman. So I really enjoyed that kind of change. It's much more challenging in that respect.
Yeah, and you've had some great races over the years as well, and hit some podiums. What motivates you, and what keeps you, I suppose, having that competitive edge to keep going? Like,
well, initially, like, I just love being outside. So any opportunity to get outside and train, particularly after work and that, it's a good way to unwind from the day, or equally going for a run in the morning. It's just a great way to start off the day. As my role as a physio, my main job would be kind of motivating or encouraging people to take up exercise or engage in some form of physical activity. So then this has a knock-on effect of motivating me as well. To the competitive edge, I suppose similar to what Regina was saying, I just want to do the best I can, and always trying to kind of push my limits or test my physical and mental capability. So even, like, I suppose in any race, like, you're always trying to go that extra little bit and just see how tough you are and what your resilience is like. And sometimes, as you said, it can lead to success, but then other times on the flip side, you can pick up some injuries. So I've definitely suffered from my fair share of sports related injuries over the year. And it is a delicate balance to figure out, individually your sweet spot and when to kind of push hard with your training or your racing, but equally to know when to kind of pull back that bit in order to close that gap on the risk of injury.
Yeah, and I suppose that's one thing as athletes that we don't do that often, is actually pull back. If we even feel a twiggle, rather than taking a light week off, we tend to kind of go, yeah, sure, look, it'll be fine, and drive on. I suppose it is good just to recognize that it is important just to take a bit of time if we do feel a niggle coming on.
Absolutely, because sometimes just taking that time initially when we feel a bit of a niggle, or particularly if we have had a previous injury and we're feeling the same symptoms develop. So just even backing off a day or two, or particularly with adventure racing, you've got the opportunity to cross train. So if it's a niggle you feel coming on with running, why not take a few days off and focus more on the bike or in swimming, just to give it a chance to settle down?
Yeah. And Eimear, what would be the most common type of injury that you see in female triathletes, adventure racers that come to you, or that come to any physio kind of probably seeking help or advice?
Typically, more so with the new to the sport or new to adventure racing, female athletes might present with, I suppose, what we call shin splints, so medial tibial stress syndrome. Whereas a more experienced adventure racer, we don't see that as often. They'd more present with maybe stress fractures. Other injuries would be tendinopathies. So where, the tendon hasn't quite acquired the capacity to tolerate the giving training load. So again, that whole thing of doing too much too quickly. And we're seeing that a lot now, I suppose, with the current and the previous lockdowns, where people are getting out and they're walking every day or they're running every day. And again, their bodies aren't used to that, particularly if people aren't getting into the pool now or doing that cross training. Other type injuries would see, you can see your traumatic injuries if there's any falls or crashes off the bike. So again, we'll come across our fractures or dislocations, bony bruising, contusions, and even concussion type injuries as well, if there's any trauma to the head. One of the main running injuries, both for the male and female athlete, is knee pain. So again, they can present with pain on the front of the knee, so patellofemoral pain, pain behind the knee, and again, that could be from the biceps, or the pain on the inside or the outside of the knee. And one common structure that I would hear a lot of athletes complain about is the ITB band. So that's the iliotibial band syndrome. We now know it to be more of a compressive syndrome as opposed to friction. So I suppose for short-term relief, massage, foam rolling and stretching may have some effect in the short term, but if we're looking for a more longer term relief from this, then as a physio, we would spend more time addressing any biomechanical errors, training load errors, and any neuromuscular deficits. So again, we'd be looking at strategies maybe to increase step cadence, and that will reduce overstriding, increase step width, particularly when runners go from road running to trail running. So they're running on those narrow trails, and that encourages more of this crossover running pattern, and that puts a lot of tension on the ITB band. And particularly with downhill running, a lot of athletes will complain of the ITB pain when they're running downhill. So in the short term, we'd look at strategies of maybe taking them off the trails or reducing their downhill running. But as best as possible, we're trying to keep people doing some form of running. So even if we get them running on the flat or doing more cross training, just to let the ITB settle down.
Okay.
Ready to reintroduce a graduated return to running program.
Okay. And Eimear, would you see more injuries in females over the age of 40 that are racing, as opposed to, females under the age of 40, or are they pretty similar?
To be honest, yeah, pretty similar. I would say we'd see more injuries in the novice female runner. So that's the female runner who's new to running or new to adventure racing. And that could be at any age. So they could be starting it when they're in their 20s, 30s, 40s, or 60s. So really, it's not as such age specific. It's just that runner who's new to running. Because they tend to, I suppose, like everybody, we're quite eager and enthusiastic at the start, and we might do too much too quickly. So we haven't allowed our tendons and our bones the time to adapt to the training load. Yeah. So there was a good article there recently that Sonia O'Sullivan had written for the Irish Times, and again, it was about the aging athlete. I suppose what she emphasized there is that, the aging athlete, we shouldn't fear speed sessions or high intensity workouts. So really, it's a very positive article for the aging athlete, and I'm including myself in that as well. That, we've definitely got the ability to do all forms of training, whether it be speed work or high intensity sessions, but it's just how you go about approaching it. So it's a gradual build up to the tolerance of that load.
Yeah, and so if we're looking at tolerance and load, what kind of warning signs should we be looking out for, or risk factors that we should be looking out for to minimize any injuries while we're training?
Exactly. So I suppose if if we're thinking about in relation to any bone stress injuries and that, that will typically present with pain on loading, so pain on running. So, and the pain doesn't really seem to dissipate with running. Whereas with tendinopathies or muscle strains, we tend to be able to get through the session. It's kind of got more of a warm-up effect. If we're suspecting that there might be some reaction in the bone, generally be quite tender on palpation, and we ourselves can do that if we just use our fingers. And if you take, for example, along the tibia, the shaft of the shin bone, if you're palpating there, if there's like a focal point of tenderness, that might be an early warning sign, particularly if it's not getting any better. And if you develop any night pain or pain after the session and you're just resting on the couch. So there are warning signs that, okay, something's not quite right here. And I would suggest, at that time, then it's best to maybe go and see your local physio and just get a proper assessment. Even at home, a simple thing you can do is a single leg hop test. So if you suspect that there might be a bone reaction or stress reaction, seeing what your ability is to do a single leg hop. And if you're unable to do that due to pain, then you're not able to go out for that run session.
Okay. And just a question there on the board, Eimear, which maybe we should leave it till later, but I just directed you now that we're kind of talking about this. How important do you think including strength and conditioning in a training program is?
Oh, very important. So I suppose strength and conditioning, a lot of times with adventure racing, we're very keen to want to get all our run sessions completed, cycle or kayaking or sea sessions completed during the week. But strength and conditioning is equally as important, and really they both go hand in hand, they complement each other. So introducing these strength and conditioning sessions not only help to minimize the risk of injury, but also help to improve your actual sporting performance. So again, we can't eliminate the risk of injury. It's virtually important or impossible, as it's part and parcel of every sports. But with the strength and conditioning, I think in the off season, even doing a minimum of 2 sessions a week, and then when you come into racing season, you can drop that back to 1. At the moment, I appreciate it's very difficult due to the lockdown situation and the lack of access to the gyms. But even starting to initiate a body weight session at home, and then see if you get some resistant bands or weights to incorporate into the program.
Okay, and then that nicely brings us along. So if we've done our strength and conditioning and all of that, and we've still had an injury, what kind of rehab prevention strategies should we, as female athletes, be incorporating into our training schedules?
So again, we've touched on the strength and conditioning, so that's a really important component. After that, a lot of multi-directional loading. So it's very, very good for bone health, because that's very important for the female athlete. As over the age of 50, 1 in 2 female go on to develop osteoporosis. So it's really important that we start maintaining good bone health. Also introducing plyometric type training. So this is really good for the tendons, because they're energy storage and release. And as we run, we go through this stretch shorten cycle. So plyo type exercises, they're not something to shy away from. They can be quite simple, ranging from even just doing a little bit of skipping on the spot, some type of plyo lunges, squat jumps, jumping jacks. So incorporating them into, I suppose, when you're doing your strength and conditioning workout, you can have that maybe as the warm up for it. I suppose with the female athlete, sometimes with these high impact or loading type activities, we might experience some pelvic health issues, such as maybe stress or urge incontinence, or even severe pain. So if that's the case, then go and see your women's health physio, because they'll be able to give you more specific advice in regards to these exercises and in relation to running and pelvic health advice.
Okay. And finally, Eimear, have you any other final tips or suggestions for us all here tonight that that we can incorporate?
Oh yeah, actually, another important thing is, which will lead on to kind of Laura's talk, it's really, really important to incorporate mobility and flexibility, yoga and Pilates type work into your week as well. So again, that might be only 1 session a week, where you're doing, you're moving your joints through the full range. They're getting that flexibility and you're getting some control. So it's really important, to introduce that and to do a bit of the relaxation and mindfulness as well, because it's quite stressful times at the moment. And this stress also is load. So load isn't just about going out and doing heavy sessions. Load comes in all forms. So stress is a form of load. So any lifestyle factors at the moment, like particularly if people are working from home or homeschooling, like they'll have all like an impact on how we train and our performance, and also maybe increase the risk of injury. So, if you're out there on the trails or in the kayak and you're not enjoying it anymore, you're feeling fatigued or tired, then it's, it might be time to pull back, have a rest, and just kind of reassess, what your training load is, and if there's other life stresses going on at the moment, and maybe you might need to just back off a little bit or do something else that you enjoy doing, or chat to one of your friends that you train with, because chances are everybody's experienced highs and lows in relation to their training and racing. So, I know I have, and it's good sometimes to take a break and then to come back to it when you really feel that you're ready to, embrace it again.
Okay. Thanks a million, Eimear. That's very informative. And if anyone has any questions, please feel free to pop them up there in the chat and we can ask them again if you have any questions for Eimear at the Q&A at the end. Thanks a million, Eimear.
Thanks,
we'll talk to you later. Okay, so we're going to move on to Laura now. And Laura, you hit the old podium quite regular and had a couple of nice national championships there over a couple of years, and the expert side of things. I suppose, what keeps you motivated, and how do you keep that competitive edge?
Thanks, Lorraine. How are you? Thanks for having us on tonight. Like yourself, I think we're kind of driven by just the love of it. I don't know, motivation, like even in lockdown, to be honest, like I'm still enjoying my local adventures. Obviously, it'd be fantastic to get out of the bubble, and when you are used to going away on adventures, and I got a van there last year or the year before, it feels like I only got it last year because they've hardly been out in it. And the point of that was for training adventures, going around the country, not even going away. I can't even do that. But anyhow, motivation, I just love it. I've always done it. It's like breathing. If I'm not training or if I'm not outdoors, and it is more outdoors, I teach the yoga, and that's probably the most indoors thing I would do, apart from swimming in the pool. But like I'm not great at the turbo training. I think I've said that to you before, or the gym. So I just love getting out, and when I'm not doing it, like that's kind of what motivates me. I definitely get the runner high. It is like a drug. So I think that in itself is motivation, and it's just something I've done since I was knee high to a grasshopper. Like I was from being tiny and being brought up kind of in the outdoors. My dad is very much into the mountains. Trying to keep up with him at the weekend was always motivation.
He keeps you on your toes, so
the soup and the sandwich at the top of the hill, and then maybe something nice after when you finish. Like, and that was probably the original motivation, and then it just kept going. The competitive edge, like again, I'm probably a little bit like Eimear. I do get bored easy, and I'm always like looking for new challenges and kind of pushing myself to my limits, and finding those things that I'm trying to avoid and actually going like full tilt at them, like so in sport.
And you would have started off, Laura, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you would have started off running and doing a bit of triathlon first. So how did you get introduced to adventure racing?
Yeah, well, I was actually a 100-meter sprinter growing up, and I used to be fast, like, and I would just, over the years, that kind of just
You still are.
But it was, and that's probably where the competitive edge came from, like in my early teens, like, and so I always ran, and I always ran for the joy of it. So even when I went to college and I had a moment, I used to always fit in running, or when I was traveling, I'd fit in running. I didn't drive till my mid to late 20s, which is embarrassing enough. So I cycled everywhere. So I just ran and cycled all the time. And then I lifeguarded in college. So I was always in and out of the pool. So I kind of fell into triathlon as soon as I could afford a bike after college. I said I'd give that a shot. And very soon after I did a couple of adventure races, and I was just like, this is deadly. I got to run off-road in a race. Like, that was the thing that always probably put me off the triathlon. I don't really love running on the road, and it doesn't love me either. So being able to compete, and I'm not a great mountain biker, so the adventure racing style in Ireland, that you can road bike in like really cool places and you can off-road run, and then the kayak, well, it's always kind of short, so it kind of is okay. But yeah, that's kind of where I came. But I did do triathlon for quite a few years, and I was competitive at it. But my love was definitely for the mountains, and even my training for triathlon would have been more trail running, you know, as opposed to the road running. I wasn't very good at the structure of that either. So yeah.
Yeah. And that's good. And then, like, I suppose, like, you know, with all your training and everything, how did you end up becoming into yoga and starting to teach it and going down that line of it? Like, where did that all pop into?
Funny, like, you know, growing up, and especially when you get into sport young, it's something I wish I had discovered years ago. And like, you know, I put my body through a lot of battering, especially with speed, you know, in my teens. Like, I would have injured a lot, which you shouldn't be at that age, you know. And it was because we didn't really have any strength conditioning yoga. We didn't know what that was. I thought yoga was like, you know, lying there chanting. Like, I hadn't a clue. Like, and a lot of people still do, you know. And then it was only probably, oh geez, it was probably, maybe I went to a couple of yoga sessions when I was in college, but I never really warmed to it, because yoga is like, how to compare it? I suppose it's like wine. Do you know, you try, if you just try Merlot and you hate Merlot, you might never try red wine, even though Shiraz is gorgeous. Do you know?
Yeah.
So I find I was trying a few different yogas, and none of them were really suiting me, you know, but I was always kind of drawn back to it. And then it was really, I suppose I was dabbling in it. And then I had a car accident not that long ago. It was around 2012, I think. And I was training for my first half Ironman at the time. That was over in Galway. And I had a full meniscus tear in my knee. So I kind of went from like 110% to zero overnight. And I couldn't do anything. Like, and I had got whiplash as well. So everything was kind of out. And I was kind of trying 1 hour and swimming, and I was doing elliptical training, but like mentally I was going insane. Like, but I was still determined to train for this triathlon. And a friend recommended me this kind of, like, it was like a power flow yoga outside Dundalk, out in Concarlingford. So, you know, you're traveling a wee bit to get there, but I just fell in love with it the first couple of sessions, because I think for me, I was missing the kind of, because I was so used to that full on drive from the training, I had been missing that. And when I went to this type of yoga, it was more of a session, as opposed to, I wasn't going for relaxation. I wanted a workout. And this hit the spot, you know? And but then the more I did it, the more I started getting the benefits of the actual mental focus and the breath work and the strength and all these other things that I wasn't going to it for, you know. And kind of over time, I suppose I was doing that. And then how I got into the teaching, like I was moving to, well, I was going traveling with the intention of working a bit in Australia. And I wanted to go to India. I'd been before, and I wanted to go back because it didn't settle. I didn't settle when I was there. I just wanted to get out of there. But I knew it was this amazing country because I'd heard so many amazing things about it and spoken to all these people who'd loved it. And I was like, I want to give it a chance. So I wanted to immerse myself in yoga, but I didn't really want to teach it. I just wanted to, and to be honest, the cheapest way to do that was to do a yoga training course, a yoga training course. So it was a full immersion for your 5 weeks. And then I signed up to a couple of extra weeks over there in Ishala, just kind of refining the yoga. And then like when I got the train, I loved the training, was really tough. Like, it was extremely tough. And but when I got out the other side, I loved it. When I moved to Australia, I was working in a secondary school teaching, and they asked me would I teach a bit just to the students and the teachers, like just as a kind of a freebie. And I was like, yeah. And I realized I actually loved it. I loved teaching it more than I loved teaching the actual secondary school subjects that I was qualified to teach. So that kind of was my drive. And then I taught a bit out in studios in Australia. And then when I moved to Canada, I did a lot more. And when I came home, again, I didn't do it for the first while. And then friends asked me about maybe doing a yoga for triathletes. And so then I opened it up to yoga for athletes. And then it just took off. And yeah, I love it. I love teaching it, and I love getting the feedback from different people who are feeling the benefits from it. Like I get a real buzz out of that. So that's it really. Yeah.
And I suppose, Laura, like, you know, we're all training so hard, and as Eimear was saying there, to incorporate strength and conditioning into our weekly plans, and, you know, talking to Regina about, you know, recovery in the recovery rooms and stuff. How beneficial do you think yoga is? I mean, I know I do yoga. I always try to do it at least once a week if I can. And I find it very beneficial. But I suppose you immersed yourself into the whole yoga thing out in India. So, like, you know, and you really learned the benefits of it that, you know, you can bring to all of us, especially as you teach it as well. So I suppose what key benefits do you find the yoga brings for your training as well? Like,
for the training, yeah, I suppose, I mean, it depends really what you're looking for, because as I said, there is so many different types of yoga. Do you know, like if you're yin restorative yoga, which is really slow, really gentle, you're holding poses for a very long time, and then there's your more kind of power flow vinyasa. So if you're looking for a bit more of a workout, you know, there's multiple different ones, and if you only try one, you're nearly doing yourself an injustice until you find one that actually works for you or suits you. Like the particular style I trained in was more fixed sequence. So it was the same sequence, it was a Ashtanga, but it was the same sequence you did, and you developed within this sequence. And I loved practicing it, but teaching it was so boring, like, you know, because you weren't adapting it to the people that you were teaching. You know, you couldn't theme your class because it was going to be the same. Yeah, you were progressing, but within the same thing. And within it as well, there was a lot of forward folding, which is actually something that as athletes we don't really need so much, because we're already compressing into the front of our body, be it our chest or our hips or our core. So all this kind of forward motion wasn't very nice for me. And also I already had over-lengthened hamstrings, and then I was trying to stretch into these over-lengthened hamstrings, and now I'm very conscious of that. So the type of yoga I like to teach is very different from the style that I was taught in, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
so with the type of yoga, I think particularly for athletes, and some people will kind of sing the praises of the yin, like the really gentle, slow releases, which are good, but in fact sometimes you can overstretch doing them as well. So I think a lot of it is strong practice is really important. So yeah, you maybe are coming to the session for flexibility, but at the same time, as an athlete, you don't want to be walking around like, you know, that your muscles are actually limp because they're so overstretched. Like you actually want to keep those little compressive tissues within the muscles, so you're kind of ready for action, you know, but that they're strong. Yeah. So if you can get into a stretch, but you can actually hold that stretch using the muscles around it, it's a lot safer, it's a lot more controlled. So that's kind of like, I mean, there's the benefits, that's just one of them. So strength, being able to hold yourself. I do like teaching to a more slow controlled type of yoga as well, that you can really notice the imbalances within your body, which I think is really important. As an athlete, a lot of us are kind of running around like headless chickens half the time, and we're trying to meet such a goal, or we're trying to get such a session in certain times, and we might feel the niggle and then we forgot about the niggle after, you know, and because we're doing something else. So whereas when you have your yoga and you're doing, it's always left and right, you do both sides equally, the same with your strength and conditioning. But so you'll really notice, because you're going through a slow control movement, you'll really notice if it's not happening on one side, and that might give you a little inkling as to, oh, so that's why I keep hurting that knee, or I keep rolling on that ankle, you know. So you start to get more in tune with your body. So even though it's not meditation, it's still very mindful. You start to become much more aware of your body awareness. So proprioception, you realize where you are in your space and how you're moving. And then, you know, you're not going to fix it in one yoga session, but at least you've kind of realized, you've identified something that's maybe a little bit off, and then you're able to work with it, be it in yoga, be it in your strength program, or just in how you're carrying yourself, you know, your awareness of your body, how your form is, things like that, your breath work. Again, I think I was talking to Eimear about this the other day, how your strongest mobility tool is actually your breath, and actually being able to bring your breath into the body. And particularly at the moment, I'm very conscious of it, because I know with the weather, COVID, multiple things over the last year, I've been holding a lot of stuff, and I'm finding I'm holding on to injuries that I wouldn't usually. Usually I get injured, but I usually recover pretty quick. And I find it's because I'm not breathing properly. I'm holding a lot of stuff, and if you're holding that, you know, you're not going to ever kind of recover or get out of that little cycle. So
yeah,
yeah,
and that's true at the moment. Like, we are all just holding, like, you know, we're all just waiting to be able to release that we can go out and do stuff and be normal. And so yeah, we're all definitely holding on to something. And as you rightly say, we're not probably breathing fully, because we're worried. People are worried. You're going out shopping, and you know, it's like, you don't want to be there, but you have to be there, you know. But yeah, I definitely think it's great. And like, definitely with the yoga and like your breathing and everything like that, I think translates onto the trail, because you have your balance work in yoga and your breathing. So even from a runner's perspective, like, you surely have found benefits of that over time since you've been doing yoga.
100%. Like, I will notice, like, if there's periods where I haven't been practicing as much, I really notice it in my running, particularly because I'll find I'm just not carrying myself. I'm not as strong. Like, I might start off, I'm grand, and then half an hour into my run, I'll start to notice my form kind of falling off, or I'm kind of rolling or whatever. And particularly for the off-road stuff, like the adventure race and the off-road running in particular, like the yoga, like for your ankle stability, your balance, how you throw your body, how you twist, all of that, like, I find when I'm not practicing, I will actually notice those little differences, because I'm not activating those same little muscles that I've kind of teased by letting them kind of get activated, and then I'm pulling back. So like, a good thing about lockdown is I'm actually probably teaching more, and not even teaching more, but because I'm not in a studio, I don't have the opportunity. A lot of the time teaching in studio, I'd be walking around and I'd be adjusting and all that. And like, even when lockdown's over, I probably won't be able to touch people anyhow. So I'm actually practicing more when I'm teaching, because I'm more conscious of people seeing what I'm doing, as opposed to having to adjust them. So I found from that, I've gotten a lot stronger this year. Now, I'm not saying I still have the little niggles and the injuries, and I'm not saying that I'm probably slower, to be honest, because I was doing a lot more training, specific training last year, but I definitely feel a lot stronger from it, you know, from the extra bit. So.
And do you find, Laura, let's say from a biking perspective, whether it be mountain biking or road biking, obviously for the solos events that we do in Ireland, it's all road biking, as you said, but for the adventure racing, let's say the longer team stuff, it's all mountain biking. And some people find that the mountain biking can be a bit more difficult on the body. Like, is there anything in particular, do you think, that yoga can help from a biking perspective?
Well, actually relaxing, and that's probably my biggest thing on the mountain bike. I don't relax enough. I'm great at preaching how you should relax and you should drop back your shoulders and you should maintain a neutral spine. But I know myself, when I come to a downhill and I'm on a bike, the last thing I'm thinking about is lengthening my spine and opening my heart. And, you know, so I think from a mindful point of view, like, you know, just actually tuning out and getting a bit of focus and trying to eliminate all the chitter chatter, like, that's kind of a good thing for what you need for your mountain bike, and just to let it go, literally just do it, you know, stop thinking, stop overthinking. But also from a physical point of view, I mean, I've had people come to me who've had niggles on the bike, and to cure them, I'll actually give them different postural alignments that I'll talk about in my yoga poses, like things like, you know, drawing your shoulders back, engaging your core, allowing your lower back maintain its neutral position, you know, so things like that that you will automatically do just for good posture, but particularly on the bike, and then relaxing the upper body, like not holding your arms out rigid, having a nice little flex in the elbows, like things like that. So definitely, but I mean, I wouldn't just say that's just from the yoga, you know, it's a combination, it's a holistic approach from different kind of therapies, different conditionings, different coaching, you know, so
Yeah.
it definitely would help. Just have to relax.
Exactly, we can all do it relaxing now. Thanks a million, Laura. That's great. Great to get an insight into that and how yoga can, you know, be important in our training program as well. I see we have some questions here, so I'll take a look at them, but and you're okay to stay on, the three of you there for a moment. So one of them there was at the top, how are you keeping your training up in lockdown? And I suppose I'll throw this out to all three of you. So Regina, if you want to go first there, how are you keeping your training up in lockdown?
I suppose, well, I have more time now anyway, and there's homeschooling going on at home, so to be honest, any chance I get, I'm gone.
Yeah.
But I suppose to vary it, you know, because it does get a bit boring because we don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what races are coming up. So, you know, this year I started doing a bit of mountain biking, which I wouldn't have done, just for a bit of variety, to try out something different. And I suppose as well is to go, I know we can't go too far, but just change your routes, you know, pick different routes to try and take the boredom out of the same old, you know, road running or whatever, go onto the trails. It's just trying to keep a bit of variety, to keep interest, you know, and you are on your own, so it is hard, but I don't really have much else to be doing. I'm only gone back to work in the last few days since last week, so I've been off since Christmas. So I'm kind of waiting every day to get a chance to get out, you know, so it's easy for, you know, it's just, I need it. So
you look forward to getting out. So
I can't wait. So I suppose that's what keeps me going.
Yeah. And Eimear, how are you keeping up your training in lockdown and working, because you're still working obviously and stuff, so how are you coping with that?
I think for me, because I still have the structure of getting up and going to work every day, that's kind of kept me sane, because, you know, I'll structure my training in relation to around going in the morning or in the afternoon, so I still have that structure to the day. However, you know, I miss getting into the pool. That's the big thing for me. I miss getting in for a swim, because it stops me running too much as well, and it gives me that nice recovery, and I have that, you know, the freedom in the water. So I have to be kind of careful again, not to do too much running sessions, because I'm not doing my normal swimming. So probably like a lot of other people, doing some of those home workouts. So I like, you know, even doing like the likes of Laura's yoga classes, and then I would teach Zoom Pilates twice a week as well. So I mix it up with that. And I suppose one of the benefits of lockdown is there's less traffic on the road. So whereas before I would have normally just driven to work every day and stuff like that, now I use that as an opportunity to cycle into work, and, you know, there's hardly any traffic. So that's one of the good points. But yeah, again, like, you know, I miss training with a lot of people. Like, I still catch up with one or two friends, but again, none of those, you know, big training groups or anything like that. So kind of looking forward to getting back, you know, where you can actually train with groups of people again, and have that sociability from it, because that's one of the main things that I like most about adventure racing is, you know, your network and the community that you get around you.
Yeah, exactly. I agree. Yeah, you miss the group training sessions, and just as you rightly say, the sociability side of it. And Laura, for you, you're obviously really busy at the moment as well. So how are you keeping your training up in lockdown?
I am. I'm getting out. I think as well. It is. You know, I'm a school teacher as well, and, you know, being stuck on a computer is not my, like, I got out of the office to get away from that, and now I'm back in it, even though I'm teaching. So when I get a chance, I'm getting out that door. But like Eimear, I would incorporate quite a bit of swimming, and that would, not so much because I don't compete in it anymore, but I'd use that very much for my recovery session, and I'm really missing that. Like, I'm really missing the effect of that. And I probably got excited there at the start of the last lockdown and overtrained and picked up quite a few niggles because of that. So I'm trying to pull back and probably running a bit too much, and then with the weather not biking enough. But at the moment, I'm not trying to beat myself up about it, and I'm just trying to enjoy getting out. There's no races right now, so I think just kind of tipping away, keeping yourself right, trying to avoid picking up new injuries, working on strength. I've actually incorporated a lot of strength recently, which is something I wouldn't have done. Specific, and mostly just body weight stuff, with a few little extra weights. But that, working on something that I never really bothered to do, and using that time, let's say I'm not in the pool, what'll I do now? So that's
okay, that's good. Well, it's good to know, like, and it is hard to keep yourself motivated when you don't know, especially if you're race orientated. I'm sure there's a lot of people on the call tonight that may not mind whether there's a racing or not. Like for you, Regina, I know you're probably looking forward to a race, but at the same time, you're just looking to get out there just to get a bit of headspace from the four kids and no school. So I can imagine, it's just a bit of peace and quiet that you're looking for, like, and to get out in the trails. But I just have another question there as I'm going down through them. And I don't know which one of you would be up for answering this, but any tips or advice on returning to training and having COVID and still feeling some fatigue? I don't know, Eimear, would we throw that one to you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think at the moment there's a lot of new research coming out from the British Journal of Sports Medicine in relation to returning to sport post-COVID. It really depends on how severe you had the symptoms of COVID, whether they're mild, moderate, or severe, and that's really going to dictate your return to sport or your previous level of fitness. So I think what I would emphasize or stress here is it can take time. The rehab can be slow, and it's not to, I suppose, stress yourself out about I need to get back, because that will actually limit or hinder your return to sport as well. So again, if you were running 5k or 10k prior to getting COVID, with no bother, your first main goal is really to get back to walking that without feeling breathless. Okay. A lot of times as well, you can use your heart rate monitor, a fitness tracker as well, just to monitor your heart rate and see where you're at. And it depending on whether you required hospital admission or not with your COVID, if you were in hospital, like, you may have been given an oxygen, an O2 SATS monitor as well. So, if you're having difficulties, there are things that you could be monitoring your heart rate and your oxygen saturation as you're exercising. But don't be afraid to contact your local physio or even your local hospital. A lot of the physios that are working in the outpatient departments, they have been involved in the rehab process of a lot of these patients who've had COVID in order to return them back to their quality of life for the physical fitness. So they're probably maybe the most appropriate people to guide you on that. But it can be slow. It just depends on how severe your symptoms were. And it's all about getting back to walking and without feeling breathless. And again, there is like a scale that a lot of physios use called, and even I think athletes use it before we had fitness trackers, the RPE, rate of perceived exertion. So again, using that to see how you feel after your walks, or even if you're starting to run. And again, if you're getting back into run and you haven't been running for maybe 6 weeks or 8 weeks due to having the COVID, even something like a couch to 5k, following a simple training program like that. Now, obviously, your fitness before that might have been excellent, but they've still got a place or a role to play, and they can easily help you get back to running 5k.
Okay, that's great. I have a couple of questions here that are kind of the same, just in terms of how much bike sessions would you recommend per week, and then obviously I suppose a couple of people are kind of looking, what does a typical training week look like for the three of you? I suppose just in terms of how much running and bike sessions would you recommend? I suppose realistically looking at that, it depends where you are, if you're only starting off for intermediate or if you're kind of looking to hit the top there. So I suppose, Regina, would you have any recommendations there on running and sessions and what you'd recommend, like from your own perspective and with the groups that you would have been involved with?
Yeah, I suppose we probably focused a little bit more on the bike than we would have for the adventure racing. We found, say, that if you were strong on the bike, you had kind of a better chance. You know, I don't know why, it's just a lot of the adventure racing is hard hills on bikes and that. So like we would have maybe had, say, 2 sessions where you'd have a long bike and a short run, or then just do a short bike and, you know, do the opposite. And as mimic the race too that you would be, say if there's a race coming up that you had, I don't know, it'll probably be October now, but just say if you were thinking of doing something in, say, either Killarney or Glendalough, say, just take Glendalough, it starts on a hill. We would have kind of mimicked that race. So we would have started on a hill for 5 or 6K and then do a little bit of the run and what, you know. So like it's hard to, it depends too on what you like. Like I love the bike, so I nearly do that 3 or 4 times a week if I got a chance. But I do like running too, you know, but it's,
yeah,
it depends on what your preference is and what you have the time for too, because the bike does take a bit of time, you know. But if you had, say, an hour and a half that you could do a short cycle to your route for the run and then cycle home, so you're getting a little bit of both in.
Yeah.
You know, but
what would a typical week look like for you, Regina? Obviously, we're not training for anything now, but if we were back training, what would a typical week be for you while you're handling all the 4 kids as well, making sure they're all right?
I suppose, I don't know, would I be a great example? I'm a little excessive at times about training, do you know? So I probably overdo it a bit much. But like say Wednesday and Sunday would be bike and run. So you try and do the 2 together. Friday morning to try and get a road run on a Friday. And then like that, now that the pools are closed, if they weren't, I'd get a couple of sessions in there as well to recover, you know. But I'd probably be more out on trails and roads than I would be doing what I should be doing, strength and conditioning and a bit of that, you know. So and it depends on the weather too, you know. The summertime exactly. You would be inclined to get more out.
Yeah, okay, that's great. And Eimear, I suppose again, just dropping those 2 questions in at the same time, how much running and bike sessions would you recommend per week? And as again we've pointed out, depending on the level, but I suppose on a general case, what would you be kind of thinking?
Again, it's very much individually tailored, so you know it's quite hard to kind of give a general answer to that. But and again, as well, it depends on if previous injuries. So for example, like I've had previous stress fractures and tendinopathies, so I tend to not run more than 3 to 4 times a week, and I leave a day in between my run sessions. So I might run 3 to 4 times a week, and then the other maybe bike twice a week. This time of year though, I always tend to take a break from the bike, so I tend to take January, February off the bike, and maybe focus a little bit more on strength and conditioning, mobility, just because it's more the off season. So I'd kind of, and the weather's bad as well, like, so revert back a little bit to that. Okay. I think really to answer that question, you know, if you really want to you know, get your sessions right per week, that's where the role of a coach or a mentor comes in. So having a coach kind of design, you know, individually tailored training program that suits your needs. So your needs are going to be different than my needs. So like for instance, my job, I'm on my feet all day, so you know that's low too compared to someone else maybe who's has a more sedentary based job. So sometimes for me, less is more for me, whereas another person could maybe handle another session. So yeah, I think that's where the coach and again, the coach isn't the physio. The coach is maybe, you know, they're specific to triathlon or adventure racing, that's where they become involved. And it's really like a shared decision making between the coach and the athlete. So this is where the athlete, they're responsible for providing the coach with the information on, what's going on at home, like, do they have a few kids, like, and really I can only squeeze in 3 sessions during the week of 30 minutes, but at the weekend I can do a longer session, as opposed to someone else who maybe has more time during the week. So
Yeah,
that's where, like, you need to have that kind of, I suppose, open discussion with your coach before they kind of draw up your program, because sometimes you get a shock when you get these programs. You might look at it and go, how the hell am I going to fit that in my week? I work 40 or 50 hours, I have to homeschool, so you need to make, it's all about setting kind of realistic goals, so SMART goals.
yeah. Okay. And I suppose then when you're racing again, like we asked Regina, what would be a typical week for you when you're kind of getting into race mode?
So I suppose when I'm in the racing season, I'll probably drop the strength and conditioning down maybe to just 1 session per week. And I'd maybe tend to do that towards the beginning of the week, say if the race is on the Saturday, and still keep up probably before the race, maybe 2 runs and 1 bike in that week. But again, might reduce back the intensity. So this is where you're having your, I suppose, your taper as such.
Yeah. Okay.
And then I suppose another important element that I mightn't have touched on when I was talking earlier, it's recovery as well. So, and everybody's different. I think Laura, for instance, she recovered very quickly in between races, but other people, might take a bit longer. So whereas one athlete, you might see them racing every second week or every week. You might not be able to do that. Maybe you need to have 2 or 3 weeks between races. So it is very much, you have to figure out what works for you and what's the best formula.
Okay, great. And the same question to yourself there, Laura. What do you like? Would you have any advice there in terms of like an average week for somebody starting off? Or again, as we said, we don't know exactly where they are.
It's very hard because it's very general, like
Yeah.
you need to know what's their background. Maybe they played football competitively for years and they're getting into adventure racing, and you could assume they're at maybe a higher fitness level, so
Yeah.
you can start with longer or tougher sessions, whatever. It also very dependent on what race or what type of race you're training for. Like last year I did a lot more running. Even before lockdown, I was always intending on doing a lot more running. So the bike, I was still maintaining a few sessions, but they were more kind of low intensity. Whereas when I'd be in like the shorter day adventure race style things, I'd be having my hard bike session. So even it depends on the year, it depends on the race. Even within 1 year, you might have 3 or 4 races and they're very, very different. So your training might change, that you're going to peak hopefully for that race or whatnot. Like Eimear though, I do find, and even though I come from a running background, when I run every day, it is too much for me. Like I do need to back off, but I think it's the quality of the runs that you do. So I would always try and incorporate, I would try, this is in an ideal world. And depending if you're recovering from injury or if it's too much, so you adapt it, but I would have, a speed session, maybe a kind of a hill or a fartlek session and a long run. And then everything else would be easy or should be easy. I tend to run myself, but with the running and then the biking as well, you have a hard session, an easy session and a long session, just very generic, it's really, really depends. The swimming's lovely in between. The kayaking, if you can get out, is lovely in between as well. And then obviously incorporating your strength, your conditioning, your mobility within that program as well, and keeping it consistent. I think with strength and conditioning, and I'm guilty of it myself, I go through a phase of doing it for a month and think I'm deadly, and then it all falls to pieces. And the same with yoga. I'll see people and they'll come to me for maybe 3 weeks and they're loving it, and then something happens and they fall out of it. But really, to see results in those types of training modes, you do need to keep it consistent, to actually see the benefits of it. So yeah.
And what would be a typical week for you coming into kind of race season? Like how would your typical week be?
It'd be kind of as I was saying, like those 3 kind of key run sessions. Same 3 key bike sessions. So I'd be double sessioning in the days, in the morning and the evening. I'm not great at running first thing, which probably isn't great because a lot of races start early in the morning. But
why?
I find my body's a lot easier getting into the pool or even doing a little strength and conditioning or the yoga. Obviously, I love them in the morning. I can get on the bike, but actually I get on the bike easier than I get on the run.
Yeah.
But yeah, it'd be double sessions, and then the weekend I'd have my long sessions, maybe do a brick. But again, my brick sessions, you're talking, you know, you might have your long bike and just do a short run off the bike and just try and get the legs used to it. I try not to overload and take that recovery as well. Like there's no point in doing all this training if you're not allowing your body absorb it. So if you just continually batter your body to bits, you're going to injure and you're actually going to plateau, or you're going to your performance is going to get worse as opposed to improve. And I think that's really important as a new somebody new to the sport to realize it's not all about volume, it's not all about load, it's actually the quality of the sessions is nearly more important. So you're better doing 3 really good sessions a week as opposed to doing 7 really like fatigue session where you're just feeling like you're just battling through it and you're not even enjoying it anymore. Do you know, because at the end of the day it's supposed to be fun. And your body is going to react. If you're not having fun, again, you're holding yourself wrong. You're just, you know, the joy isn't there, and you're going to hurt yourself.
Yeah. Okay. There's just another couple of questions. Do you think Gale Force West will go ahead? It's hard to know in June. I don't know. We won't really know anything until I suppose the government tell us. I suppose with any of the races, we're not going to know much until later on in the year. So sorry, can't be a bit more particular in that. What does a typical week? Any tips for newbies wanting to get into adventure racing with not a huge fitness? Guys, anyone there want to take that one?
It's not so easy in COVID times, I suppose, because usually I would say find your tribe or find your little group, join a club. It doesn't have to be, you know, it could be a triathlon club or a running club or a running group. It doesn't, you know, they don't have to be highly competitive. But I definitely think when you're new to it, it's a really lovely way of bringing yourself into it gently, and you're getting out, and it's very motivating because you've kind of committed to a group. So like Regina would say as well, like, you know, the group sessions, and then you're kind of more easily going to fall into your individual sessions. And also if you have questions as a new person to the sport, you have that group that you can fire those questions off to, and you're not feeling as lost, you know. So again, difficult to do, I know, at the moment, but that would be in normal times. I think that
I agree. I think it's great to get involved in a group, and as you rightly say, you know, you're going to have questions about gear, and I know we'll cover gear and all of that on another session, another Zoom call later on. But yeah, like there's loads of questions people have, and I'm sure as you said, like with Regina there, with when you started up the group sessions with Into the Wild, I'm sure lots of people had different questions for you as well, in terms of, you know, what they needed to have or to get in order to adventure race. Like
yeah, and sure, when you do one, you don't belong copping on what you need.
you
know,
exactly.
what you should have had and didn't have. So yeah, it's just trial and error as well, isn't it?
Yeah, and I don't think, like in that question as well, it was just about a huge fitness level. I think to try one, you know, you can try the small ones. Like there's normally 2 or 3 different options there. So I definitely say they're good crack. You know, people are nice on them, and just go out and give it a go. Like they're good fun. And I think you'd all agree there, like Regina, myself and yourself, we've raced alongside each other from time to time and had an all chatting, a bit of banter and waving at the other ones.
So that's all part of it.
Yeah.
A lot of people do come. I know myself, like, a lot of people come to adventure racing on their own. Like, so, you know, I kind of say enjoying a group, but like it is a really, and that's what I actually really love about the adventure racing as opposed to some other sports. It's so open, and as you say, it doesn't matter if you're at the front of the field or the back of the field. Everyone has done this amazing adventure, and everyone's wanting the crack at the end and the banter, and this you're talking about it, and it is a really friendly sport to get involved in. So even if you know nobody, turn up at
Yeah.
the start line and you'll know everyone by the end of it, you know, if you're open to it, and just, you know, like, because everyone's there for the same reason. They're there to have fun and an adventure and, you know, test themselves, like, so.
Yeah, I agree. We have another question here, just in terms of, would you ladies recommend an adventure race specific coach?
I don't know any, to be honest.
Any either, actually.
Yeah. I mean, you could go to like a triathlon coach and just substitute your swimming sessions with kayak sessions. There's a plug there for kayaklon.
Exactly. Yeah, but true. Sorry, Eimear, were you going to say something? Did I interrupt?
A lot of coaches for triathlon, you know, you'll find that they coach a few other disciplines. So, you know, they might do multi-sport coaching and that. Like, I think they've got a few more tools than just for the, you know, the triathlon or the Ironman.
Yeah. And I think, doesn't Padraig Murray or whatever his name is, he used to adventure race, and he's a bike. Am I right or wrong there? He's a bike, like, he coaches bike. So I'm sure he'd be able to incorporate some adventure racing into that as well as he used to do it himself, if I'm correct.
There's a lot online, like, you know, outside of Ireland too. Like, I know when I was living in Canada, and I think Rachel might have mentioned her before, Jen Sager, she's a coach over in Canada, but she does online programs, and she's very good at working with female athletes, adventure racers, because, you know, that's kind of her specialist area. But, you know, so there's, if you don't find anyone locally, and maybe you prefer, you know, a particular type of coach, like, you know, if you look online, you're going to find a wealth of them as well at the moment, anyhow.
Yeah. Just a question there. I'm not going to obviously pronounce this right, Eimear, but this one, part of this question is going to you, and the other two can give a comment on the latter stage of this question. Any advice on a tight, long isthmus muscle? It's on the chat there, if you can see it. It's probably about halfway down, after running. Long isthmus muscle. And while we're looking for that, girls, any suggestions on good trail runners?
You know, the ons, I used them for the last year. Like, I thought they were good. They had great grip. They're not great, maybe that they don't last that long if you don't look after them, but as far as grip on trails and mountains, I thought they were. So I don't know, it's just one anyway.
Yeah, like, I use innovates now, and I normally use the rock lights for adventure racing, and I have a pair of mud claws that I'm so sorry I didn't have for the Skyline race up in the moor, and back when all we were doing was skiing down the side of a mountain. But anyway, and the mud claw is really good. But yeah, I normally use innovates, and yeah, the rock lights I find great for adventure racing. Laura, what do you use?
I'd be Salomon Speedcross. I keep going back to. I'm very hard on runners because I'm very much a 4-foot runner. So I just wear them out, and I find they're probably the most robust for me. I love the Mizuno Hi80s. They're a little bit lighter, a little bit more movement, and yeah, they're a fun runner. Grip wise, I still haven't found that perfect runner, and the innovates I have tried a few of them. They don't quite sit with me. So, and I know they're probably the best grip wise. And again, it depends on your running style, your gait, like, you know, it's just trying out a few. I actually got Scots recently. I've never tried them out, and I'm going to try them out. So like, don't just stick with one. And it's actually good to have a couple of pairs of runners on the go as well, that you're not just wearing out one, and your foot, and especially for the off-road, that your foot gets used to the different types of movements and landing positions and stuff. So I wouldn't just get, you know, obviously if you find one and it's fantastic, stick with it, but I wouldn't get stuck in this as the one and only runner to wear, you know.
Yeah, like, I would use the Speedcross as well. I have too many runners, but anyway, it's like, when you're going out, which runner should I wear? Like, but they all do a different job, so it's like, it's mad.
Yeah.
But I don't know, Eimear, did you see that message there? Did I pronounce it totally wrong?
No, you're right. It's quite a specific muscle this person's picked out. So a relation, like, to be honest, like, from my point of view, I suppose I'd wonder if it's just that one muscle in particular that's tight. But again, if that group of muscles feels tight, again, just incorporating some yoga mobility type work is really what is key here. So doing any of your kind of spinal mobility work, so your cat cow, down into child's pose, even forward folds and that, and then from that, progressing on to some strength and conditioning type work. But again, it's quite a specific muscle, so I'm not too sure if that would be the main driver of the symptoms. Like, I'd have to fill out a full assessment, but you can't go wrong with introducing some spinal mobility into your program. And the runner wise, I suppose I would go like between the Salomons, but also just recently tried the Saucony trail runners, and they're very good.
Okay, great. And I think that's all the questions that we have.
Well,
yeah.
I saw Jer's question there. She was asking how she's going to catch us all, and I was Jer, I think if you have a race that we're starting on the top and we're going to the bottom, Jer will definitely like win. She's always passed me on the downhill, so there you go.
There's no fear of Jer. Oh my God, no fear of her at all. Okay, if there's no other questions there, I'm happy to leave it there. Oh, would anyone advocate training on tired legs or resting? Would you advocate training on tired legs or resting?
I think that it depends on if the legs are tired just in one particular session, or if they're constantly tired over accumulative sessions. So if you're, I suppose, if you're running days back to back, and say on like the 4th or 5th day your legs are tired, well then for me that would be a warning sign to have a rest day off running. But if it's just that tired, in one particular session, that could be where you're feeling a bit unmotivated, then that's kind of different than accumulation of load over time. So it's just putting it more into context, whether they're tired legs after accumulation of training load, then definitely take a rest day. Or if it's just tired because you haven't been out on the trails in a week or two, then I'd keep on running.
Okay. Okay, well look, I'm really happy to leave it there. Thanks Regina, thanks Eimear, and thanks Laura for joining us this evening. And thanks everyone for logging on and taking the time to listen to the girls. Again, if anyone has any questions after it, feel free to Facebook ARI, and we'll try and get an answer back to you. And hopefully we'll be able to put this up as a recording later on.
Thanks very much.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone. Have a nice evening.
You too. Thanks, Lorraine, for organising.
Yeah, thanks, Lorraine.
No, not a bother. Not a bother. Okay. That's great. Thanks a million, girls. It was great. Oh God, that went really well. I'm delighted now. It was